Hi, I'm Caleb Simmons, and today I want to share with you some of my own personal research about Hinduism. I've had the great opportunity to live and work in India for several years. So from this, I've been able to publish quite extensively on different aspects of Hinduism, whether they're in book chapters in scholarly books, or in journal articles, or books of my own. And these have wide-rangely in their topics, from looking at environmental issues and the way Hinduism is used to preserve sacred landscape in the city of Mysore, to the creation of comic books that tell different mythologies of Hindu deities, to another book that I co-edited that was about, is called 9 Nights of the Goddess, about the Hindu festival of Navratri. But today what I would like to share with you is the material from my first book, titled Devotional Sovereignty, Kingship and Religion in India. So in this book, I focus on the Kingdom of Mysore from 1782 to 1868. And within this, I'm primarily interested in the way that religion helps people to understand their place within the world, but specifically how it helps the kings of Mysore understand what it means to be king during a period of military and administrative loss. So for a little bit of historical background, the Kingdom of Mysore arose sometime in the medieval period. There's varying dates on this, but we know that in 1610 CE, they become a regional power after they defeat the king of Srirangapatna. And then they install their kingdom at this place. And so from there on, they're well established with a lot of documentary evidence of their presence in South India. And as they move forward, they're relatively strong regional powers with a very strong military, with administration over tax collecting and things like this. But as we know, in the 18th century, European presence becomes much more solidified within the subcontinent. And this leads to a series of wars between Mysore and the English. So this is called the Anglo-Mysore Wars. It begins a little bit before my period of inquiry. But in 1782, this is the moment when actually a Muslim king takes control of the Mysore Kingdom, and is first very strong and defeats the British, but slowly, with more troops coming to the British, he eventually loses and dies in 1799 at the hands of the British. In the same year, they install the King Krishnaraja Wodeyar III. And since this is a lecture about Hinduism, I want to focus on his rule in this portion of the book a little bit more today. So he's installed as a king, as a 4-year-old king in 1799, and rules until 1868. So he has a long period of rule. But while he's the king of Mysore, he is under the overlordship of the British Raj. At this point, it's the British East India Company. And why I find him so interesting is that there's this question that I have to ask about his kingship. So what does it mean to be king when you actually don't have power to rule? And I think this is a question that he also was dealing with throughout his entire kingship. And the way I found that he dealt with this question was that he turned to religion, specifically Hinduism, to be able to rethink his role within the world and what it meant to be a king. And so he shifts the identity of being king away from having a military and being able to be an administrator, to now the king is the person who is, you could call it divinely appointed, that he's the person that the divine has elected to be in that spot. And so instead of focusing on the lack of power that he had, he reshifted to focus on a different type of power, and that was what we might call like a divine power. And so throughout his kingdom, he focuses most of his attention, again, he can't do it on the military, so he focuses his attention on the arts, on painting, on sculptures, on dance. And what I found interesting when I looked at all of these things, they were all devotional in nature, that it was all about worshiping different deities. He would have images of himself created in stone, to where he had his hands in Anjali Mudra, worshiping gods, and he would have them installed in temples to where he could be worshiping perpetually. The paintings that he had installed Now, these showed him worshiping different deities, and in fact, he didn't just have them painted, but he would have lithographs printed of them so he could disseminate them throughout his kingdom and even send them back to England. And so everything that he seemed to be producing really focused on his devotion to God. And so as I went through and examined this, I found that this was a way that he was able to answer this question of what it means to be king without the power of being king. He just shifted that and said the power of the king actually resides in the power of the God. And this is a relationship that is unique and formed between the God or goddess and the king themselves. And this power, of course, reflected his position, but part of my argument within my book is that this also reflects for him a potential power of kingship, in which kingship was constantly under attack because there's always unrighteous elements that are trying to alter the will of the divine. But in fact, what he seems to be arguing within images of his lineage, images of him worshiping, is it's actually through this relationship with the divine that he is the proper successor of the Mysore kingship, and it's he that has this relationship, and eventually this will win out in the end, and he'll be able to return to some sort of power. So in conjunction with his own devotion, part of the program of his kingdom is to really talk about how all of his successors had this same relationship and the great glories that came within the past of the Wodeyar kingdom within Mysore. So it was through this ability to be able to simultaneously show his own devotion, but talk about the devotion of his predecessors, that it was a way of using the religious past to look forward to the possibilities of his political future, in which he would be able to overthrow the British and be able to become the true sovereign or the true king of the Mysore Kingdom in the future. So hopefully this short glimpse into my own personal research has been helpful to let you see how religious studies scholars, we work within these traditions to find interesting examples of how the religion functioned in the past and was used to make meaning for people. And of course, for me, it's how kings can make sense of their own kingship by reflecting on their place within a broader cosmos through the practice of religion. Thanks.